thanks, Francesca. I wasn't quite clear what to say. I'm just going to say a little bit more about how we succeed in the UK in reducing salt. I realise that that also in Finland there's been a very successful policy over the since 1970, and they've reduced salt from, I think, around 14 grams a day, which is obviously quite high, but probably many countries here have that level, down to about 9 grams. So although we started at a lower level, we're actually beating Finland. Japan also reduced salt in the 1960s, a government-led campaign, but they've forgotten about it, which was very successful. And it was a time when, in fact, in Japan, it was becoming rapidly Americanized and everything was going the other way. Cigarettes, weight, less fruit and vegetables, more fat, less exercise, and they had dramatic, but a big fall in salt intake and a dramatic fall in strokes and blood pressure. Now, when we're going to reduce salt, we've obviously got to measure it. There's a lot of dispute about whether we should do 24-hour urines or not, but they are really the gold standard. Spot urines are not going to give us a good estimate of salt intake, but in fact, you will know that salt intake's high in all your countries. I can tell by eating the food in the hotel that it's very salty. The bread is very salty. You can use spot urines to follow your salt reduction. So you may want to just do spot urines and then show them coming down with time as you evolve a successful policy. The most important thing is determining where the main sources of salt are in the diet of your country. Obviously, what you want to do is target those foods that are the biggest sources of salt. Obviously, in Europe, the biggest sources of salt are bread, then cereals and meat products and cheese, and we've targeted those particularly to get salt intake down. And you must then develop a strategic plan that will work, and it depends on whether all of the salt is added by consumers or whether it's from the food industry. And by the food industry, I mean not only processed food, but all of the food you eat outside the home, fast food, any sort of food outlet where the consumer has no control over the salt content. And I don't know in your countries, it will vary from one to the other, but clearly your policy will depend on the balance between whether the consumer's adding a lot of food or whether it's from the food industry. It's much easier to deal with the food industry because, as I said earlier this morning, we're going to get them to reduce salt in all products, and the public don't have to be involved, much as we would like them. But if the main source of salt is added by the consumer, then you have to get them to use less salt and use every strategy in the book that you can to get across that salt is dangerous, this white substance is a dangerous crystal that's killing them in the long term. It's toxic, and it is. It's putting up our blood pressure and killing us from strokes, particularly strokes, 60% of strokes due to high blood pressure, and heart failure particularly, and also heart attacks, and cancer of the stomach, and osteoporosis. So they're very important additional things to get to the public, because often people are more worried about cancer than they are about heart attacks. So that's a very important slide for you to take in terms of your plan for your country as to what you're going to do. And certainly in the UK, what we did was to set targets for the industry that they had to achieve within 5 years. So you give them a 5-year time to get targets for each group of foods. And that strategy is to reduce slowly. That target will not get down to the level we want to achieve. It will be an interim measure, and then after 3 years you review how they're doing, reset the targets for lower levels, and that's the plan in the UK. So it's a continuous process of gradually screwing the food industry down. Now, you can either force them to do this by regulation, which of course is brilliant if you can do it, but we can't do that in the UK because of the EU forbidding it, and that is one of the reasons why I would like the UK to leave the EU, but that's irrelevant to you. We are bound by a lot of backward people who are dominated by industry. So we have to use a voluntary policy. Now, if you're going to use a voluntary policy, it's got to be on a basis that you get a lot of media publicity about the dangers of salt, comparison of different food products, showing that that particular branded food or that supermarket has far the worst ones. Why are they doing that? Why aren't they conforming with the targets? And also offering inducements to the food industry of praising them when they do a good job. And that is how you get a donkey to move, and the carrot and stick approach is what you need to think about if you're going to have a voluntary policy. But of course the publicity that we get is actually designed to get at the food industry and politicians. Because if the politicians continuously see something about salt, which they do in the UK media, and the chairman of big food companies and supermarkets continually see salt there, oh God, I suppose we better do something. So you've got to realize that you've got to keep up a campaign of continuous pressure in the media. And of course, in the end, the public get that message, and in fact, salt sales in the UK have fallen by 30 to 40% to the public. So we have succeeded in not only reducing the salt in all processed foods by about 20 to 30%, but we've got the public to eat less salt that they add by around 30% as well. So eventually you'll get through to the public that salt is dangerous, but it's quite difficult to persuade people about that. We have been successful in the UK. It's an ongoing programme. We're nowhere near the 6-gram target, and we have to keep fighting for it. And I would love to see more NGOs, non-governmental bodies set up that are going to pressurise your government to do something about salt, because it's the simplest and most cost-effective thing to do. And this is the labels. I'm pleased to say that actually in the UK, as of today, all of the supermarkets are going in for a traffic light GDA combined label, and all of the branded food companies are going to follow suit, because we're going to force them. They would get media publicity all the time, all the NGOs combined, to force the food industry to adopt clear traffic light labelling with guideline daily amounts, which is what the public wants, and we're entitled to know, and I'd like to see that in the Arab world and the Middle East. The cost, of course, is amazingly cheap, and this is greatly attractive to governments, particularly in hard economic times. I've shown you these this morning, but look at the middle and lower income countries, that if we reduce salt by only 15%, we would save 8 million deaths a year in 10 years at a cost of only 0.10 US cents for every year. You can't have a more cost-effective policy, and I would really like to see action in the Arab world and in the Middle East. Thank you.